Hi, Gwen. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, it's been a crazy few months here in terms of the metals market. Well, no complaints, enjoying it.
No, definitely
Yeah,
not.
so we'll spend some time talking about it later on. But let's start with the last time when we talked a few months ago. We was announcing the restart of Madsen Mine. So it's been a few months now. So tell us a bit about how's the operation going, like what are the challenges, what are the things that happen in moving forward with this production there.
Absolutely, yeah. So we're basically a quarter, like 3-4 months into ramping up the Madsen mine. Madsen's a high-grade underground gold mine. And ramping these things up takes focus, I guess, and some patience, because there's always something there's always a critical path, right? The thing that requires the attention. And at Madsen, that's just ramping up the number of tons that we're pulling out of the mine on a daily basis. And to be able to do that, we have to get access to more areas underground, and just get all of our equipment going underground. Those are things that we're still working on. So in ramp up, it's a balance between doing the regular mining and setting up so that you can do the regular mining. That's what ramp up is about. You're still doing two things at the same time. It's going really well. We're very comfortable. We're very confident in how the ramp up is going. And I will say, we expect to have that balance complete. We're pushing to be in commercial production, which is, where you stand up and say, okay, the mine is running the way that we want this mine to run. We're going to do that round about the turn of the year, right? Round about New Year's time. And we've outlined quite clearly the things that we want to accomplish before we're ready to say that. So like I say, having all of our equipment in place, there's a few aspects to how we move material in the mine that we're still getting up and going. One of those is being able to take waste rock, so the rock that doesn't have any gold in it, that you mine as you make tunnels to new areas. That's mining as well, but it's just called development because it's not actually mining any gold. Being able to shove that rock into old mined out areas underground, because if you can shove it into old areas underground, then you don't have to truck it back all the way up through the mine and out, which is a really important cost saving. So we've just gotten that process going now. We're now storing almost all of our waste underground, which is really a fantastic accomplishment. That happened just in the latter half of September. The next sort of big operational thing that we're going to get up and going is the shaft. There's a shaft at Madsen that was built back in the late 1950s. Last year, we rehabilitated the shaft itself, made it strong. We realized halfway through this year that we could actually move rock up and down that shaft. And so we ordered the parts that we needed for the mechanism, and those are about to arrive. So by November, we should be able to move about half of our daily mined rock, like ore, up through the shaft. Again, that's rock that we don't need to truck up from the bottom of the shaft. Again, a really important efficiency factor, cost factor. So these are the things that we're still getting going. But overall, the mine is ramping up. We're producing more tons out of the mine each month. Our gold production is ramping up. We're very confident that we're going to be able to get this thing to commercial production around about the end of the year. And we're super excited, of course, to be doing that in this gold market, where not only is the price that we're selling the gold that we are producing already at just unbelievable, but also there's hardly any companies that are offering new gold mines. And we've always believed that new gold production is the best way for investors to have leverage to a rising market. So we're really excited that those pieces are coming into play together.
So is that in line in terms of 2026 next year, sort of let's say the year thing in terms of the production level? Because you're saying that you're going to went into commercial production level. Is it looking positive that 2026 that you have that level in line with what you're expecting? And in terms of the cost wise, is it also in line? Are you looking at to try to meet those targets?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, the targets that exist out there are the ones from our official mine plan. That's the study that we put out in January. The way that we're actually operating the mine is a bit different than that initial mine plan for good reason. It's not because there was a problem, it's because we chose to do it differently. And that choice was based on the fact that that mine plan assumed a pretty low gold price in how it designed the mine. So it really only mined the highest grade bits of the deposit, because that's what you do in a lower gold price environment. In fact, we're not in a low gold price environment, so we're able to mine more of the deposit, essentially. We have larger mining areas, we use an easier mining method. So it is a little bit, the way that we're operating the mine is a little bit different than the mine as that mine plan lays out. But we're doing it because it should enable us to make more money, mine more of the deposit, produce more ounces over a longer mine life. And we do think that we're going to be able to come about in line on costs as we get to that point. So we haven't, one of the big reasons to, there's two big reasons to get to commercial production. One is to just achieve it. And the other is when you get to commercial production, you then stand up and say, okay, next year, so for us, that will be in 2026, here's the number of tons we expect to mine, here's the gold grade that we expect those tons to have, and here's the cost that we expect to produce those ounces at. And so when we declare commercial production, we'll give that pathway for 2026. And I think it's going to be right in line with what that initial study expected. And if you incorporate sort of the way that we're doing things a bit differently now, I think the market will say, yeah, okay, you've done it. You've done everything that you said you were going to do.
So let us talk a bit about some of the important stuff happening in the last couple of months. We put out the PEA on Rowan, which you already mentioned in the past. It's something that you want to add on to your existing production in the future, so the pipeline, the growth. Can you talk a bit about that PEA? And is it something that you expect, the numbers and stuff?
Yes, I'm glad you asked, because I am very excited about Rowan. And I think it's something that I think Rowan is a really important value add for West Red Lake that the market is not really paying attention to yet. I think understandably, the market is really focused on, is West Red Lake making the Madsen mine work? That has been the question since we bought this thing a couple years ago. We're still ramping it up, so the market is still fairly focused on that question. But from where we stand, we are confident that we're making the Madsen mine work. And so we're more focused on looking forward, marching this thing along to commercial production. Okay, well, what's the path forward from here? And for us, the path forward is about increasing the amount of gold that we produce in Red Lake. And so we sort of see two ways to make that happen. We see some potential to pull more gold from the Madsen mine, hopefully through grade. That's the easiest way to do it. Mine the same number of tons, but have those tons carry more gold ounces. That playbook has happened many years, many of the years that the Red Lake mine down the road has operated. Over 70 years of operation, a good chunk of those standout years because they hit these high grade lenses in and around the deposit. And when they're mining extra high grade, they produce more ounces. So, we see potential through grade and then potentially in future mine design to pull more ounces from Madsen. So that's one side of growing our production in Red Lake. But the other really important and sort of charted out path for us to increase our production in Red Lake is with our other project. That's the Rowan Project. It's 80 kilometers away by road. It's only about 30 kilometers as the crow flies. It's got a very nice, small but very nice deposit. This is a deposit that's almost vertical. It starts at surface. It's relatively wide. The gold mineralization is nicely consistent. So those are like designed for mining characteristics. So we wrapped an initial mine plan around that. The idea here is to develop an underground mine at Rowan with just the basic infrastructure there. So the mine, a water treatment facility, a camp for the people who work there, the equipment that you need to do the mining, and then to truck that mineralization over to Madsen for processing. And the Madsen mill has capacity to handle the 400 tons a day that the Rowan project would spit out. And this will add 35,000 ounces a year to our production profile in Red Lake. Like, it's a very significant, if we are assuming based on what people can guess about, the grades at Madsen and the throughput, if we're expecting something like 50,000 ounces a year at Madsen in 2026, Well, adding 35,000 ounces a year from Rowan, that's a really significant add, right? And it's fairly near term. So I really want to underline that we've done a bunch of the baseline work at Rowan. We've already done this initial mine plan. We're going to move that initial plan into the next level, a pre-feasibility study, certainly by this time next year. That'll be a joint pre-feasibility study mine plan for Madsen and Rowan together. That will provide the engineering answers for the permit application. We'll submit that permit application. The province of Ontario is talking a lot about speeding up permitting timelines, and we are working with the ministers there. We're encouraging them to use Rowan as an example of how permitting can go quickly under these new guidelines. And so we're pretty confident that we are going to be producing ore at Rowan, in 2028. Early 2028, late 2028, that we will see based on a few of the permitting questions yet to come. But we're going to push this thing ahead, and it's a really significant part of what we're creating in Red Lake. We want to have a growing production profile from a set of high-grade mines in Red Lake, and we're doing the work for all of those things to happen as quickly as we possibly can.
Wow. Well, good things happening. The important part is because of seeing a rising gold price, this kind of level, just not gonna try to, of course, try to speed things up, but not going to too rush and making sure you got the right, mine plan and things in order to make it work at the end.
Yeah, for sure. There's always a balance there. And I mean, I would even say that at Madsen, the market wishes we were already fully ramped up and in commercial production. But, and we wish that too, sure, of course. But you have to be careful. You got to be methodical about these things. If you try and rush, I suggest that the last company that tried to put the Madsen mine into production did it way too fast, and they weren't methodical, and they didn't take all the steps that they needed to take. And that was a unmitigated disaster. And so we are very different from that. We're methodically marching this thing forward as quickly as we can, but making sure that we check all the boxes along the way.
So let's talk a bit about another important news. You also raised some really strong capital. You do a bought deal for $41 million. Can you tell us a bit about who are the shareholders or investors in participated and how it came about? Is it just because of the market, how the interest keep on growing, so that's why you did that financing?
Yeah, for sure. So we had been saying for 6 months leading up to that moment, and continued, that the statement remains true, that we expected that we had the capital and cash flow to do our ramp up plan, to get this mine into production. But we were, approached by investors who were already long in our stock, who were keen to put more in, and so the opportunity to raise money was presented to us. And so then we were thinking, well, does that make sense? And the real balance here is, of course, dilution. Shareholders don't want to be diluted, but having access to additional capital now creates the ability to do things that otherwise we would not be able to do or wouldn't have been able to do until, I don't know, the middle of next year. So those things include pulling forward some projects at the mine that, like I say, we wouldn't have otherwise been able to start until the middle of next year. Bringing them forward means that we're creating the opportunity to pull more tons out of Madsen sooner. There's a ventilation project, there's a power project, there's more work on the shaft. These things, getting them started now means that they'll finish sooner, obviously, than if we started them in the middle of next year, and makes the potential to pull more tons from Madsen sooner. Our whole genesis is, our whole reason to be is a growing production profile. So we thought it was very important to take advantage of that was a good use of, that was a good reason to raise capital. In addition, the Madsen deposit as we know it goes down to about 1,100 meters. We have strong conviction that this mineralization continues at depth. It does in the rest of the Red Lake district. The Red Lake mine down the road goes to 3 kilometers depth. We have scattered hits that show it continuing. The sooner, if we can get deeper sooner, and then drive out laterally a bit and start understanding what's happening at depth, then we can start understanding how to approach, how to engineer what we call Madsen 2.0, the second half of the Madsen mine. You know, if at some point that involves, and it will, another shaft that moves some number of tons a day, I mean, that would be kind of like adding Rowan. It would be a significant increase in the number of ounces that this mine produces, but you can't start envisioning that, let alone communicating that plan, until you better understand what's going on down there. So being able to do some of that work sooner, some of the ventilation and power projects sooner. And then in that raise, there was some flow through money, that kind of money that you can use only for exploration. We can't use that at Madsen, but that money was for Rowan to make sure that that project keeps marching along so that we can achieve those timelines and get it into production on the time frame that we were discussing. And then if ramp up continues to go smoothly or the gold price remains at these phenomenal levels and we end up in the first half of 2026 with additional capital, well, then we do have some debt that would be lovely to pay off earlier, right? And that, again, when we're talking about investors want a rising gold production profile, that's what they invest in. The reason that they do that is for the free cash flow. And so the corollary, the other thing that you need is for that rising production profile to be unhedged and as unhindered by debt as possible. And so certainly paying off debt sooner to increase our free cash flow is also one of the thoughts that we had, one of the rationalizations for the financing. So there you go. That was a really very long answer to a short question.
Let's talk a bit about some of the sentiments change. Last time we talked, I think in for the last few months since May and June, I see a sort of a rise in the interest in the gold and silver equity. So the disconnect we mentioned in the last few years, sort of closing in the gap. Have you seen the sentiment between you and some of the conferences you attended to in the last few months? Do you see that growing interest is really for real? What do you think of this, institutional money or retail money coming back to the market and sort of helping the market? And how do you think this is going to? Are we just the beginning, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think retail money and institutional money is quite obviously appearing in the gold space in particular. And I think the two lead examples of that I can point to are, I mean, there's a lot of share prices out there in the gold space that have done crazy things in the last little while. And I mean, more specifically, you can point to an explorer putting out drill results. I mean, for many years now, you can put out pretty good drill results and maybe not get much response to them at all. And now a company puts out strong drill results and they could multiply in value. I mean, truly, a year ago, putting out the same drill results would have gotten almost no response. And now we're seeing companies go up 50, 70, 200%. Literally, I was looking at examples of this just yesterday on really good drill results. So that shows that there's significant investor interest across the spectrum, retail, institutional, all of it. The other thing the other comment that I'll make on this is I was just in Beaver Creek, which is one of the best mining conferences that happens each year. It's really designed to bring together institutional money, like funds, with mining companies, and then of course all of the bankers and whatnot that are in the mix. So we were in Beaver Creek. We had 3 days of back-to-back meetings, and there were a lot of funds present there who didn't know much about gold mining, but wanted to understand where to buy. And that is not something that has been present in the gold space for a very long time. It was notable. Like, we had a good number of meetings with, multi-billion-dollar funds. So generalist money that is like, oh, we need to ensure that we establish a gold position. And so they were looking for how to do that. So that was a really notable thing for me. So yeah, where it's going from here, really hard to know. I mean, I think that the gold price itself has very strong support here. Gold equities are always going to be a bit more at the whims of, the overall markets and economic strength and, baby in the bathwater type influences. But I think the gold price has very strong support. So it's kind of like I want to step back from worrying too much about the day-to-day or even the week-to-week for the equities and just focus on the gold price, which I think has really strong support from here. And that gives me confidence to carry on.
Yeah, so let's focus a bit more now on the West Red Lake, on the share price. Last few months since we started a bit steady rise, but not crazy as some of your peers of the junior market, of course, putting out drilling results. But what's your thoughts about in terms of the investors thinking about West Red Lake now? Is it because they're thinking, oh, you already started production? They're looking for a major milestone later on, so they don't feel that sort of intent to just invest right now. Is that the reason why it's sort of steady right now? And what's your thoughts on the
No,
coming up, and what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, it's a good question for sure. It's a really appropriate question right now. I mean, West Red Lake the Madsen mine has its past, right? This is a mine that went down in flames 3 years ago under a different company, right? And so it totally makes sense that the market remains very, I say, focused on the first question, which is, will West Red Lake make the Madsen mine work? And we are in the ramp up phase, so that question isn't fully answered yet. Like I said earlier in this conversation, we internally, for us, the question is answered, but I totally understand that the market is still wanting more data before they see that question. They put a strong check mark against that question. So I think that's the biggest thing right now, is just over the next few months, getting this mine to commercial production and just really clearly giving that check mark. And we're going to do everything we can to give people confidence along the way. But that, I think, is the first thing. With that question a little bit still outstanding, I don't think the market is really looking at the next layer of opportunity at West Red Lake, which, as I said at the beginning, is our really clear focus on charting a path for growth in Red Lake. And so as we can answer the first question, I think we're going to be able to start drawing attention to the second opportunity, right? So I think that this is going to unfold over the next few months, which is to say we're going to give people confidence, and then we're going to chart a path to growth. And then that's when the value for that potential will start to show up in the share price. But it just comes back to the Madsen mine being the thing that it is. We always knew that we were going to talk till we were blue in the face about why our approach was going to work, but people weren't likely to really get on board until they had a lot of data showing them that our approach does work at Madsen. So we're still in that, but I can't say enough. Like, we internally, we believe that we've done this, like that we are doing it, right? We're still marching this thing to commercial production, but we have a lot of confidence that the path ahead is exactly what it needs to be.
Yes, I think for investors to think about considering investing into West Red Lake, they could also look into the smart money, recent financing, start supporting the company moving forward. I think that will be a good example. I think it just can be a good entry point for them to consider.
Absolutely, no, for sure. And I mean, I don't like to sort of lean too hard into this like smart money and then by opposition supposedly dumb money. I don't like that categorization, but there's sort of more experienced gold investing money for sure, as there is in any sector. There's groups who have a lot of experience in biotech and in industrials and whatever it is, and so they understand sort of the ways that those sectors work. In gold, like you say, the institutions who participated in our financing are generally institutions that understand that it takes time to ramp up a mine like this. So they, in general, were not too tripping up with questions on, well, what happened yesterday? What's happening tomorrow? What does this month look like? They want to understand our confidence, our rationale for being confident in the path to commercial production, and that's what they're betting on. The path to commercial production being clear and steady, and that a plan for growth from there exists. That's their playbook. I understand that there's a lot of other people who whether because they're not experienced or whether because of past investment experiences are a little bit more focused on the day-to-day. But yeah, that's the institutional money really was interested in our financing for sure.
Great to talk to you, and it's always a joy to speak with you about your company and about the gold market, of course, Gwen.
Thank you so much, Gilbert. It's great to see you, and let's do this again soon.
Sure, for sure. So.